Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to the Wix Wiz. Today we're going to be talking about something that is really going to be exploding soon within the Wix ecosystem, and that is Wix Blocks. Wix Blocks allows you to build reusable components or applications that you can use throughout your different websites, or even now share to the Wix App Market and monetize to share with other people who want to install them on your sites. These are advanced applications that allow you to design code on Wix using the Velo APIs. So if you want to learn more about this, let's get started. Okay, so before we actually get started making a Wix block, I want to talk a little bit about what Wix Blocks kind of added advantage is and how it differs from the tools that are already provided for kind of saving your designs and styles in Wix. So both in the Editor X and in the classic editor, we have different tools for saving different design elements that we created and reusing them throughout different sites. So whether it's Editor X, we have the option to store assets, so design once, reuse anywhere, and in the classic editor, we have the option to store our designs in My Designs and kind of reuse them throughout different sites. Okay, so those are tools that we already have, but those tools are pretty much only design. So if I design a certain section or a certain group of elements, then I can save that design and apply it in different sites. What Blocks really adds on is the ability to add complex functionality, to add Velo code, backend functions, and reuse throughout different sites. And the additional bonus that just rolled out a few weeks ago is the ability to publish your block to the marketplace and essentially share it with other people so that they can add it to their sites, either for a fee or for free. And this is really a direction that Wix is going in terms of creating an ecosystem where people can share designs and kind of build off each other as opposed to just being very designer centric and kind of you have your own ecosystem and you're working alone. I think there's still a long way to go there, but I think even though Blocks is currently still in a beta, we're in a good place to really explore this tool, especially with the availability now on the app marketplace. So let's get started actually creating our first block. And in order to do that, it's still a little convoluted. So there's no really easy way, like, you go to wix.com and you start a site. It's not that simple. You have to have a site open already. And then when you go, and you can go to either in the classic editor to add apps, and then here you can go to private apps, and then here on the bottom you have create new app. That will create a new Wix block. And similarly in editor X, if I was to go to here, the app market and then private apps, and then here I have create new app. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And it's the same whether you click create new app in editor, classic editor or editor X. You'll arrive at this same page. And you have the several options here. This blank canvas that we have here, that is pretty much the main gate into Wix Blocks. I've played around with some of the other stuff that we have here, but pretty much almost every time you're creating a block, especially if it has some kind of design element to it, you're going to want to go in through this blank canvas. Code packages is more for blocks that are primarily code. They don't have a design element. It's just kind of a backend package that people can install. This, if I'm not mistaken, is replacing what used to be not NPM packages, but it had a name, like custom NPM packages or something like that. Like here, if we go, I have to turn on dev mode. So yeah, here we used to have NPM packages, Velo packages, and here there used to be, I don't remember what it was called, maybe private package, I don't know, something like that. So this is replaced here by private apps, which is essentially blocks. And here's another way to create a block. We already found an Easter egg here for creating a block. So that's kind of what this code packages is. And custom element I haven't explored yet. I'm not sure how this differs from creating a custom element that is kind of inside of the editor, because you also have the option there, but maybe that's something for a future video. So I'm just going to go ahead here and click blank canvas. And the blocks editor is, you'll see it resembles editor X. So if you have zero editor X experience, this is another motivation to kind of get on that wagon and start learning a little bit about editor X. You can use blocks on both of the editors. So even though this editor looks like editor X and it follows the same kind of design principles, this block will be able to be used both on editor X sites and on classic editor sites. In a previous version of the blocks, there were actually two, like, I don't know if it was design presets or two, you can design specifically for each editor. At the moment, I think they kind of did away with that. And now you pretty much just design once and it's applied to both editors. So that is what we have here. So this is the blocks kind of interface. It kind of resembles editor X, I said. You have here your canvas where you're designing the block. Here on the right side, you have the panels for touching up the layout and the design. Here on the left, so instead of different pages for our website, we have different widgets. And these widgets are kind of different elements of the block that people can install on their website. We have our public and backend code, so it kind of jumped us in directly into dev mode. And we have databases. So this is really the added value that we have to just creating a design that you can share between your different sites, because here we really can add functionality. In terms of what we have here on top, so here we have the plus button, which is just to add different Wix elements, so the same elements that you'd add to your regular website. I'm not sure if everything is available here. Who knows, there might even be things available here that are not available on editor X or the classic editor, but principally this is where you'd add elements in. And here you can open up the layer panel, similarly to how it would work in editor X. Up on top here, so you'll see we have three kind of sub panels here. And one is the design. So this is where we actually lay out the elements on our canvas. So let me just go ahead. I'm going to add a title. And I'm just going to say, hello world. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the whole process of building out and publishing a block just with this hello world, just to show you the full process very quickly. And then we're going to hop into how to kind of create a slightly more complex block with some coding and stuff like that. So this essentially what I'm showing you now would be good for if you did a only design-based block with no custom functionality. So I put my hello world in there. Let's center it and make it look all nice. And awesome. So now that I've added this block, I can kind of go into configuration. And here we have this action bar is the action bar that people will see when they access this block in their editor. So here you could see edit text, and you can see connect to data, and you can see kind of add animation and stuff like that. And you have the option here of removing some of these things. So let's say I don't want people to animate my block. I don't know, for some reason, I think it's a really bad idea. So I go ahead and click remove, and people won't have access to that when they install it on their site. So that's right over here. And I can also add additional action buttons that I took away by accident. So that's here, this animation. And I can also kind of tap into, so I can give a name for the element. I can kind of adjust different behaviors here. So this can be selected, can be removed. I'm curious what this can be removed is. I'm not sure about that one. I'll have to get back to you on that. Learn more. That would be a good place to learn more about it. So yeah, you can kind of read up if you're curious about the can't be selected, can be removed. Add an action button, that's the same as we had over here. Yeah, sorry, I mean, just also there's a lot going on here, and also this environment kind of changed a little bit. The blocks is technically still in beta. I don't know if anything in Wix actually ever really goes out of beta, to be honest. Yeah, so things do change here. I can't say this is exactly the same as it was the first time I created a block. But yeah, that's what we have here in the configuration. And the next thing that we have is panels. And this is kind of an additional panel that you can use to edit the settings of the block. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we create a slightly more complex block, but that would be just here, click Create Panel, and we'll dive into that later. So that's kind of what we have here up top. And yeah, so you can go ahead and change the design. By default, so the block is linked to the site theme. So you can see here that you have this kind of chain, and that indicates that we're currently connected to the site theme. I can also kind of change it and remove that connection to the site theme. But if you wanted to, let's see, connect to site theme, there was some way to remove the connection to site theme. I think now it's not connected to the site theme, and then if I click here, then it is connected to the site theme. Okay, so you see the chain come back. And the same goes for text as well. So you can see here the color of the text is linked to site theme. And in terms of the theme, it's also kind of connected to the site theme. Okay, so it's whatever the heading 2 of that site is, then that's what it's going to display there. And I'm not sure if there's a way to actually undo that. So by default, it has to be connected to one of the themes of the site. Maybe if I set the font like that, maybe. We'll see. Anyway, those are design aspects. One other thing you might want to take into consideration when you're designing your block is that if you have something like kind of here smack in the middle, so I have, now there's like a margin here of almost 200 pixels. So this margin won't be, person who's installing this block on their site, they won't be able to cancel out this margin. So that means that wherever they put your widget, then they'll always have this margin from whatever's on top of it, and they won't be able to control that themselves. So if you really want to give people optimal control, then you're going to kind of want to put your elements on the upper left side of the, either put it on the upper left side or make this width based on the width of the block. So let's say I put this at width 100, and then I put it right up here on top. So this will give like the optimal experience for the person installing the block because they'll have control over how the design looks. And I'll show that to you when I install the block itself. The bottom doesn't really matter so much. This is just adjustable as a canvas. Okay, this doesn't really represent the actual bottom of the block. It'll just snap right to the bottom over there. And yeah, so that, like the size of this canvas doesn't really matter. What matters is the elements inside. So if you want it to be a specific size, you can kind of throw a container in there and size it and stuff. So that's like really the basics of creating a purely design-based block. And I just want to show you, how we build it, how we install it on a website. And then we're going to hop back here and we're going to create a completely new block that will be a lot more complex. So I'm going to go ahead and click. So we have here preview and build, so I can preview. Okay, looks great. This is exactly what I want. And then I can go ahead and click build. So I could create a test version. So this test version will be just for testing out the app, and I can build as many test versions as I want. And that way it won't really affect the people who might have already installed this app. And it won't create my first version of the app, basically, if I'm just not sure that this app is ready for release yet. Because once I create a major version, so people will have access to that version even if I upgrade the app. So basically, when I'm creating a major version, it's like, okay, the world has access to this. So if you're not sure that your app is ready for the world, then I would choose test version. Obviously, you can you can improve your app and change the versions over time and release those, but people will still have access to the earlier versions. So if there's maybe some kind of something sensitive in terms of how you built it that you don't want exposed to other people who can have access to this app, then you're going to want to go with test version. So I'm going to go and I'm going to create a major version because I really love this hello world that we created. And I'm going to go ahead and I can add some information. So just say hello world. And I'm going to go ahead and click build. And now this is essentially kind of like publishing your Wix website. Okay, and there was a technical issue, of course. Let's just try that again because I don't know why that would happen. Well, hello world, and let's try that again. Maybe there was like a server error or something. Yeah. Okay. So if at first you don't succeed, try and try again. And now version 1 of my app is built. What I didn't do is I didn't really give this app a name. So you see here, it's just called My New App 17. I can click here. I can change the name Hello World, save that. I'm not sure if I would have to build it again for that to propagate, but we can check now when I go to install it on sites. So let's say I go here to my editor X site and I'm like, okay, I really want to install this new app that I created. And this is something only I'll be able to do at this point. So I haven't published this app to the app market. It's not available yet. So only I can install this. So if somebody wants this on their website, they'll have to add me as a collaborator and I can install it on their site. But there's no way for me to give anybody access yet. I think, in my personal opinion, I'll just give an anecdote. I think this is a gap that Wix should bridge. I think that there should be kind of like an intermediate stage in between just I can install the app and the app market, because I'll talk about it later on, but it's kind of hard to get into the app market. There's a lot of, I tried to get one of my apps in just when I was playing around with blocks, and they gave me this whole email back with tons of feedback, which seemed a bit like overkill for, let's say, an app that, I just want it to be available, like an NPM package or something like that. It seems a bit over the top to go through that whole kind of very stringent process of getting into the app market. And I personally think that it would be great if there was kind of an intermediary, kind of like a voluntary open source library where people can access blocks that are just there with kind of, you know, at your own risk consequences, but just to allow people to share these a lot easier, because at the moment it's kind of two extremes. That was just my anecdote about my vision for the blocks. So I'm just going to go and I'm going to show you how to install the block if you are the creator of the block. So what you have to do is, you have to go here into private apps, and then here you'll see a list of all your blocks, and this is the hello world one we just created. By the way, the name did update even though I didn't build again. And I'm just going to click on that hello world and install app. Okay, partially updated the name. Okay, so I installed the app, and here we have widget 1. One thing I'm noticing here that I didn't do, which might have been a good idea, is to give this widget a name. So here inside of my block, oops, where's my block? Here. So inside of my block, I could have given this widget like a name. So rename to the widget. Okay, and then people kind of know, especially if you have multiple widgets and they have different purposes, then you can kind of, you know, make it a little more clear which widget is what. So that's something that could have been improved on my part. And I can just click on that widget and boom, there we go. So you see the hello world is there. And you can see what I was talking about, that, now this hello world is really close to the top of the app. So I really have full control as the person installing it. Sorry, the top of the widget. I really have control here over kind of where it is relative to other things. And in terms of the bottom, I can adjust it, okay? But the top is non-adjustable, right? Because the top will just move like that. So that's just something, a design aspect to pay attention to. Some other interesting things that we'll notice here is that, so here we can edit this text. Obviously, I can't edit the content of the, oh, I can edit the, oops. You can edit the content of that text, but maybe that has to do with those settings that we saw. Close this, 'cause I don't need that anymore. But if we hop back to the settings over here, and we go into configuration, and then let's see, can be selected, can be removed. So I would have to, I guess, let's see, custom panel. I guess I would have to remove the ability to edit text. from the text box in order to prevent the situation where people will edit the text. So that would be going here and then action button settings, design text. Okay, and then I don't think that they would be able to edit the text because it's likely that you don't want people to be able to edit the text of the different things that you put in your widget. So that's just an anecdote about that. Yeah, so yeah, but you'll see here, this is kind of a Velo thing, but if you go here into, so you can't change the code for an inner element. So here I have this text box selected. So you'll see I can't really access that in the code. The only thing I can access in the code is the widget itself. And we're going to talk about the implications of that momentarily when we design our more complex widget, our more complex block. Yeah, but basically I have access here to all of the design and but not for the layout. I do have access to the layout of the general widget, but not of things inside of the widget. And these are things that you can all be tweaked using configuration. Just kind of play around with it and test your app and see if you configured it so that people have access to the stuff that you want them to have access to, and they don't have access to the stuff that you don't want them to have access to. So that's just kind of the basic process of building your block and publishing it and installing it on a site. The installation on the classic editor would be similar. So I would go here to add apps, private apps, find the hello world, install the app, and then just kind of put that right there. Okay, and there we have an element. Now it's in my header. I can move it here, just my website. Okay, and you see it's working the same. And since I had changed the text to a certain font, it's not connected to my site preset anymore in terms of the font. Yeah, so that is the basics. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new block. So I'm going to go over here. Sorry, where was that? Here. And create new app. And we're going to start from scratch. I'm closing my old block. And we're going to do a blank canvas again. And what we're going to be building together today is a to-do app block. So this is a good, hello world is always the first thing that you'll build with kind of a new platform. And then the second thing is often the to-do app because it really captures a lot of the basics of understanding a platform with some coding that has backend and persistence of data, and it's also fun and useful. So in order to create our to-do app, let's think about it for a second. So first thing we're going to want to have is we're going to want to have one widget which displays the actual to-do list. So I'm going to go ahead, first I'm going to change the name of my app. It's going to be to-do app. And then I'm going to go ahead and change this widget to to-do list. And this to-do list, so we'll have, first we'll have like a text element on top, just as a title. And this will be to-do list, and I'll center it and right up on top and make it 100%. Okay, so that's what we have here. And here, under here, we're going to actually display kind of the list of things that we have to do. And the way we're going to do that is using a repeater. So you're going to go here to layout and add in a repeater. This is also, by the way, if you're not interested in blocks, but you are interested in to-do lists, you can build this also on your regular Wix site, pretty much exactly like I'm doing now. What did I add? Did I add the right thing? No, I didn't add the right thing. I added this, and I wanted to add a repeater. Okay, there we go. So this is going to be our list, and yeah, so what I'm going to do is add into each one of these items, I'm going to add some text. Add text, and this is going to be to do item. Well, actually, I should name it something else. Let's call it to do, yeah, to do item is fine. And I don't need 2 lines here. And I'm going to put this inside of one of my repeater items. And I'm also going to add a checkbox. So that's going to be inputs and selections. Yes, they split it up here, inputs and selections. And I'm going to put in a single checkbox. And I'm going to go into settings and I'm going to remove the text of this checkbox. There's going to be no text. And it's not going to be checked by default. And I'm going to take this and put it right over here. And I'm going to make the width of it just kind of minimum. So this is going to be, can't do that. That's so I'm going to make this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the, let's make this 10%. And I'm going to take the, I'm going to take this checkbox and this text and I'm going to put it inside of a container. I'm going to make this container the full width and center it. And then I'm going to split this container into two. Okay, and I'm going to have each one of these in one of the sides of the container. And here I'm going to make the left side of the container in terms of columns. I'm going to make this, let's make it pixels. So I'm going to make it 20 pixels and center that again. Got out of center. And this will just be 100%. And I'll kind of add a little spacing here in between. So I'm going to add a gap, let's say 10 pixels. And this will center here as well. Okay, so it's looking pretty good. And height of this, what is that? The height should be auto, min height, good. And here we'll have this also be, oh, it can't be auto, min height. Has to have a min, oh, none. Okay, there we go. And let's put this, stack this with our to-do list. Yeah, and we'll get rid of this. And we'll get rid of this. Just have like a 10 pixel margin there. Okay, so we set up our title and our kind of list of to-do list. And what we're going to need to do now is set up a way for people to add things to their to-do list. Okay, so I'm going to go here and I'm going to set up another widget. And I'm going to rename this. So add new item, or let's call it add item. Yeah, I don't know if we should add widget at the end or not, but I'm going to call it add item. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add in a input. So just a regular text input. I'm not focusing very much on styling here, but I am going to kind of attach to the top and make it width 100%. So just following the principles that I explained earlier. And then I am going to add under it a button. And this is going to be a save button. Put that. So I can, what I could do is I could put these, say, put these both in a container. Put this next to it. Throw them both in a container. Split the container in two. Again, this is just my kind of design preferences. There might be other or even better ways of doing this stuff. And I'm going to change this frame to content, and then this can fill the rest. And we'll put a space in between them. Oh no, here only on the left. And then this can go, let's put another gap. Just the height of the button a little bit, just so that it's weird. Yeah, it kind of just added blank space under the button. I think that's 150. And yeah, that was super weird. Okay, I don't know. Anyway, it's not so important. I'm not really focusing on design now and teaching editor X. So this is going to be our save. So I'm going to just change this to to-do item. And here the placeholder text is I, or like buy eggs. Just an example. Okay. So that's kind of our to-do list. And here I'm going to mention one thing that I kind of skipped when we were talking about just a general design, is that we can have different design presets. Okay, so this is design preset 1. And what I could do is I can also, so let's call this desktop. And then I can add another design preset, and this will be mobile. And I'll change it around in the mobile so that the save button is under, like, let's imagine like a configuration that's a little more mobile. So let's say that's the screen width. And then I can go here and switch it to like that. And then this will be, let's change this to width 100%. And in terms of the rows, I'm just going to go max content, and add 10 pixels in between. So this will be our configuration for just 100%. This will be our configuration for mobile. Okay, so it's like the save button's a little bigger, it's under, so that there's more room for everything. So that's kind of an example. Oh no. I don't think that should have happened. um, Interesting. Yeah. So I was expecting it to behave a little bit more like what's it called? Like the different breakpoints on editor X, where if I change it on one preset, it shouldn't affect the other presets. Let me try and shift it back here and hope for the best. No. Okay. Wix team, if anybody's watching, I think this is like kind of a bug, to be honest. Because otherwise, like, what's the point of the presets? Anyway, let's go back to what we have here in terms of the desktop version. So I'm going to just try and get back to what I had so nicely designed before. And just do content. And in terms of our columns, we'll have this as auto. Yeah, okay. And then center this, make it 100%. But that's, I'm pretty sure I saw a demo. Multiple layout options for the widget. Same code across them. I don't know. I don't know. Okay, so this is going to be what adds our to-do item, and I'm just going to add in an element, a text element, and this is just going to be like our success message. So, oh, your item has been added successfully. Okay, and we'll center that and put that kind of right over here and stack it. And full width. And let's do like, okay, great. So now that we have all of our design elements set up, what we're going to do is start to code out some of these things. And one thing we're going to need to do before we start coding is to actually require person adding a to-do item to be a member, okay? Because basically, I don't want one site where everybody can just add stuff to the to-do list and everybody will see everybody else's to-do items, right? We want to kind of make these to-do lists personalized. And since we're persisting the data, we want people to be able to come back and check out their to-do lists. So we really need these people to be members. And that is something that we can add as a condition for our block. Okay, so if I go over here to app, I can go here to app dependencies. Okay, so things that our app is dependent on, and I can select dependencies, and here I can select other Wix apps that my app is dependent on. So let's say if I'm creating an app that interacts with the Wix stores, then I would need Wix stores to be a dependency. If I was building something that's based on events, I would need Wix events to be a dependency. The dependency that we need is the Wix members area. So we need members to exist on our website. So I'm going to go ahead and add that dependency, okay? And you can add multiple dependencies depending on kind of what you want to do, okay? And that is something important when you're creating your app. And you'll see that when we install the app on the website, it's kind of tell me before I install the app, oh, we're also installing these dependencies. So we're also installing Wix members area if you don't already have it on your site. And people need to be aware of that because it's kind of adding something to their site when they install your widget and your block. Okay, so now let's get down and dirty in terms of coding. And the coding here will be quite similar to just coding with Velo in the regular editor and in editor X. There are some interesting differences that we have here, and I'll try and touch on them. So first of all, you'll notice here that we have this new selector for the widget, and this kind of selects the entire widget element. So that's kind of the outer widget. If I just to visualize it, if I go back to the site that we installed our block on, then you'll see here that that's this widget here. That's kind of the element that's being selected over there, as opposed to the elements that are kind of within the widget itself. This I can get rid of. And you'll see here that there's an event listener for on props changed. And what props are different properties that you can assign to your widget that will be exposed both in code and in the editor itself when people are adjusting different settings regarding your app. So let me just kind of, give let me just leave an example of props. So you'll see here that, where was that? API. Okay, so widget API. And here we have three, essentially, we have the props. Okay, so that's what's over here. We have events, and we have public functions. Okay, so what I was just talking about was the props. And I'm going to add a property which, in the context of our to-do list, so it defines if, when our app is installed, if the list widget includes an example to-do item or not. Again, it's not a super important property, but it's just something that's contextually understandable with the current block that we're building. Okay, so I'm going to call this, the property name is going to be show example. Sorry, this needs to be like this, show example. And then here the display name will be show example. And this is going to be a Boolean. Okay, so you can choose different property types, text, number, Boolean, image, date and time, etc. So these properties can have different values, different data types. And I'm going to be choosing a Boolean. So this is going to be either yes or no. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and click create. And now here in the properties, you can see this show example Boolean. And then if I go here into, is it preview or configuration? Let's go configuration. And then if I go here into, sorry, so if I go into, okay, so first of all, I added this property to the wrong widget. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete it. I wanted to add this to the other widget. So I'm going to go here to the to-do list, and I'm going to add the property here. Okay, so show example and show example. Okay, so the properties are per widget. Okay, it's not for the whole block, it's per widget. And because this specific property is pertaining to the list, so it should be added to the widget that is the list. So I'm happy I made that mistake because I think it's very educational. And what we're going to do here now is I just want to show you how that property can be turned on and off. So if I go here into configuration, I might have to install it on a site for you to see that. Maybe I can see it in preview. No. I was so sure that there's a way to do it here. Maybe it'll come back to me. Duration. Why is it showing it like I'm zoomed in? Oh, here. Yeah. Okay. It was here. It's just I was zoomed it too out to see it. But here, if I go into settings, um, so I can't see it. Okay. So basically what we have to do is go and build test, because I want to just show you what this property is going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build a test version of my to-do app. Building, building, building. So that's built. Excellent. And now I can go here to my site and I can add, sorry, here from the private apps. And here it's going to be to do app. This is the see all versions. Yeah, test version. I'm going to install that app over here. Sorry, I had created a version of this earlier when I was just kind of playing around. And here we can see the two widgets, so the to-do list and the add item. So I'm going to add in the to-do list over here. I'm going to get rid of this hello world. We don't really need one. Put the to-do list here, make it a little smaller. And if I go here into settings, then you can see here the show example toggle here. So it's Boolean, so basically it's a toggle that can be either on or off. So if I set show example off, nothing will happen. If I show example on, still nothing will happen because we haven't added any code yet. But what's going to happen is that it'll show an example to-do item when the person kind of first goes into the to-do list, okay? Or if there's no items on the to-do list. So let's program that show example because I think it's a good example of properties. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go back to our design. And this is where we add the code. I'm going to zoom in so you can see. Okay, so here inside of the onReady function, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say load. Let's create a function. I'm going to call this function load example to do. And the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to check if this property is true. Okay, so I'm going to say if, and this is how we select the widget. So widget dot props dot show example. Okay, so if this is true, then we're going to do something. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the reverse logic. So I'm going to say if not, so if not show example, then we're going to return. But if we are showing an example, then what we'll do is I'll say const example equals, and this is going to be an object, and it's going to be an object in an array. And then I'm going to say title will be this is an example to do item. And we're also going to give it an ID because this is going to be put into a repeater, and repeaters need to have an ID that's a string. So I'm just going to give it an ID of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then what we're going to do is we're going to populate the repeater with this example. Okay, so I'm going to select this repeater. I'm going to say to do repeater, and then, and this is good because we're already doing a lot of the grunt work that we're going to have to be doing to set this up. This is going to be to do item, and this will be the title. And this will be another value, the checkbox. Ugh. This should be 100%. And this checkbox is going to be completed. Okay, so if we completed the task, then it'll be checked. And I can also add the value here of, let's say, completed, false. And now what we're going to do is we're going to populate the repeater. So I'm going to add the to-do, on item ready for the repeater. So item, and this is very similar to how we would do it in just, no, not that. So to-do repeater, this is very similar to how we would do it on a regular website using Velo. So we're going to select the on item ready, and we're going to pass in the item and the item data. And then when we get the item data, I'm going to say that the item title dot text should be equal to item data dot title, and the completed item completed should be equal to dot checked should be equal to item data dot completed, which will be a Boolean, either false or true. And then what we can do is we can say over here, we can say repeater, select the repeater, data equals example. So this is something that's a bit dangerous, what we're doing here, because later on, we're going to have to add another condition that will only load this example to do if we don't have if we don't have anything actually on our to-do list, okay? Because otherwise what's going to happen is that we'll never actually see our to-do list, we'll only see examples, which is not what we want. But at this point, because we haven't set anything up in terms of the to-do list, and I'm just showing you how to use the properties, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to load that. So every time our widget loads, it's going to load the example to do, which already has the condition built in, and this won't load if our prop is not set to show example. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build our site, build our block as another test version with this update that we have here. Okay, and then I'm going to go here to our site. And so with the regular versions, you would be able to kind of update to the latest version. With the test version, it's a little hard to know if it's kind of updated to the latest test version. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and first I'm going to go to settings and I'm going to show examples off. So I'm going to go ahead and publish this. So to do demo, that's fine. And save that, continue. Let's view our live site. Awesome. So we just see kind of the repeater here. Nothing changed. But if I go here to show example, and then I hit publish, and there's like kind of like a 10% chance this won't work, and that will just mean that the latest version of our block didn't, oh, it worked, yay. Okay, so that's just an example of what props can do with your widget. So I just showed an example of like props that are set in advance through the editor, but you also have the ability to change the props when the block is live on the site. And when you do that, then you will have access to this event listener and you can kind of run some kind of callback function when changes are made to those props on the live site. I'm not sure if this runs. I'm not sure if this runs in the editor. Let's experiment. Why not? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this load example to do, and I'm going to put it in here. Okay, and if this, okay, let's see. Might have to take this function out. Yeah. Okay. If it's in the onReady, then it won't pick up on it. So I pulled this function kind of out to the global scope. And now so basically the experiment that I'm doing right now, first time, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm very excited to see. But basically we're going to see if this will run in the editor or not. So if our props are changed in the editor, will this run? You can place your bets now. You can comment now. If you're still watching this video, it's been not an hour yet, but it's been a long time. So you must be having a good time, and I think that that would warrant a thumbs up on the video. And if you really, really like it and you want to see more videos like this, you might even consider subscribing to the channel. So I'm going to go here to our editor. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, how can I make sure that this is like refreshed? Let's try toggling it a bit. So I'm going to go here, settings. I'm gonna refresh. See, private apps installed. Could uninstall and install it again. I'm gonna refresh the editor. Yeah, and even though it takes a long time to load, it's worth it. I just want to see. It's not the best experiment because there will always be that like small doubt that maybe the app did not update. Oh, I think it did work because now it's showing the settings. And if I turn this off, oh, hmm. Um, Interesting. Okay, so basically we didn't really dictate what happens if the property is false. We just said that this won't run. So if it already changed this to this one item, okay, so what we're going to do is interesting because you never think of the edge cases. That's always what happens. Okay, so what was going to happen is I change the logic here a bit. So I'm going to change this regular, plain old, boring if statement. Oh, you know what we can do? Mm, yeah, say let example equal an empty array, and then we'll if there we go. Okay, so if then we're showing example, then we'll assign this to example. Otherwise, it will assign nothing, and then yeah, let's try that out. So I'm going to go test version, and this is why testing is so important. Okay, and now let's see. Again, we might have to reload again. Let's try reloading it again. What changes? So while that little experiment is reloading, let's talk about some of the other parts of the widget API. So we talked about properties. The other thing that we want to talk about is the events. And basically, events are something that will fire from the widget when something happens. And we will be able to access that event on our live site. So I'm going to add an example event, and this event is going to happen whenever we mark a specific to-do list item as checked. Okay, so I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to select item to do, whoops, to do item dot on, no, so actually, I need to select this completed, and then on change, And then we're going to fire an event. So I'm going to say add new public event. This event is going to be, so what you could do here is you could either give the event a unique name or you can just give it a generic name. So I could call this event change, and that would mean like some kind of change happened on the widget, and I could give it a name like, item checked or something like that. I'm going to give it the name change just to stay consistent. So I'm going to create that. And then when this fires off for the item, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say widget dot fire event. And then here I give the event name as a string. So it's going to be the change event. And then I can pass data. So let's say for the data that I want to pass is the item data. Okay. And now I've exposed this event to my website, to whoever's the website that this block is installed on. And then I can, let's say, do something on my site external to the block based on this event that just fired off. So let me just show you an example. So I'm going to go ahead and hit build here. And it's another test version because I'm not ready to publish my block yet for the world. And I'm going to head back to our example site, which is still loading. Okay, so here we see the to-do list is empty now. And let's just check back on our experiment from before. So I'm going to go here to settings and show example, and it did run. Okay, so that on props changed function does run in the editor. Okay, and if I turn this off, then it should, yeah, awesome. That's pretty cool. Yeah, so that probably would have also been written in the documentation, which is over here, all about Wix blocks. But yeah, sometimes I just like to play around. I mean, reading documentation is super important. I love reading documentation as well, but sometimes it's nice to just test things out in real life. Okay, so that we got there, and now I want to show you the events. Okay, so here is our widget. It's called to-do list one. Get rid of the one because we only have one. And I'm going to zoom in a bit so you can see the code. And you'll see that if I select this widget, so widget, what's it called? To-do list. And then we have here dot, oh, maybe it didn't update yet. We have here, first of all, we have the show example property, which we have access to. So I can actually set this using code, Velo code on my site. So I can set this to example false, and that would be the equivalent of turning this off over here. But this would only run when the Velo code runs on the site. So that's if you want to make changes to properties, on the live site. But I guess the other update didn't propagate yet. Let's see. Yeah, that should be there. Okay, so do I want to reload the site again? Wah. So I'm going to reload this the editor just so we have the most updated version of our app in there. And basically what we're going to see is that the widget now has an event listener called onChange. And this is that change event listener that I just added in. So if I go here to the code, now I hear on. Okay. And this onChange, that's the onChange that I added. If I would have called this event listener, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, then that's what we've written here for those of you who are Mary Poppins fans. Yeah, so that's the onChange. And here I can do something when the if change event happens. So we have here the event, and maybe it's called event.data. So let's try console.log event.data. Let's do console.log event. That's safer. And And if I go ahead and I publish this, I've also previewed, and I go here into our console, and I go ahead and I click this item, then you see an event fired, okay? And this isn't the regular on change for this checkbox. It's the special event that I created, type widget event, and data, okay? So completed false, and title, this is an example to do item, and yeah. So it's interesting that this is showing as false. Um, yeah, so that's actually not so accurate because if I change it, if I turn it off, so this is always showing as false because that's the item data that it got from, that was pushed into our repeater. So we'll need to find a way to update this completed data. So that's always kind of reading the updated status of that completed or not. There's different approaches that we can take. It's also not so critical at the moment because I was really just demonstrating events to you. Okay, so we talked about events and we talked about props. And now I want to talk about the last thing, which is functions. So here I am back in my block. And if you open up the API panel, then we have here the option to add a new public function. And functions you could kind of think of as the opposite of events. Okay, so events are kind of announcements from the widget to the world. I'm doing this, this just happened. Functions are a way for the site, the world outside, to control what is happening inside of the widget. Okay, so if I go over here and I click a new function, I can, thought it would give me like a little more, okay, here we go. So yeah, so it added a function, my public function over here, which is not what I was expecting 100%. And basically what we can do now is we can edit the name of this function. So I can call this function, let's say, clear list. And then here we'll have, you see it changed the name here. And function description I can put over here. So I can say clear all list, all items into do list. Okay. And it returns, what will it return? I put a void here. It won't return anything. Um, okay, awesome. So let's write out what this clear list does. It doesn't take any parameters. It's going to be a really simple function. And all it's going to do is it's going to say const list equals nothing. And um, then repeater, to do repeater dot data equals list. Okay. Um, and this doesn't take parameters. See here, basically, this is called, oh man, JD. Okay, it's blanking. I'm blanking on it right now. Basically, it's kind of, it's a special um, language that allows you to define certain metadata about your JavaScript code so that it can kind of be picked up with the telesense. And like it basically defines, it's kind of like typing. So it's kind of like, if you're familiar with TypeScript, it's just like not as strict. It's like more just informational. And that's kind of why this is throwing off red here because I don't have any parameters here. This basically would say, okay, this function has a parameter called myParameter, but there's no parameter here. So this is going like, oh no, there's no parameter. So I can just go ahead and get rid of that line, or I could define a parameter, but I don't need a parameter. Okay, so this clear list function, what it does is just clears the list. Okay, so basically this gives anybody who's using our widget the ability to clear the list using Velo code. And let's see what that would look like from the site side. So if I go ahead and I build this test version, and then I go to my site, whoops, if I go here to my site, and I'm going to add a button. Okay, and this button is just on my site. Okay, it's not part of the widget. This is on my regular Wix site. And I'm going to add it here under the to-do list. And I'm going to change this to clear. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select that button. Let's say clear button. I'm going to select that button, clear button, dot on click. And then I'm going to do select my to-do list. And then I'm going to say clear list, but this update didn't propagate yet. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to just refresh here. Once you already have versions, it becomes a little easier to do this because unlike the test version, which it always just says test version, you don't know which version of the test version you're in. Wix, if anybody's listening, that might be a cool new thing to add. With the actual versions, you can kind of see, okay, you're on this version, so you know that the update has happened and which version of the app you're working with. So I'm just going to go here and clear list. Remember, no params, no nothing. And awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and publish that. And if I go to the live site and I click clear, then my list is cleared. Okay, so this is an interaction between the outside world, between my website and the widget itself. Obviously, these are super simple examples, but really using these three tools of props, events, and functions in the widget API, we can really create a lot of interactivity between our widget and website, and we can also really allow other developers to maximize the usage of our widget. Because if I didn't have all this stuff, then I could take a button and I can build it into my widget and have the same functionality as clear here. But it's good practice to expose these things to the outer site as well, just to give people more flexibility. If they want to do this whole clear thing another way, let's say, they have some kind of other thing going on their site and they want to clear the list when that happens, as opposed to using some button that you put in the widget, it's just best practice to give people as much access as possible without compromising security or basic functionality and stuff like that. So those are the three widget APIs that we have access to. And now we can go ahead and really just build out our widget because we haven't really done anything yet in terms of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head back to the add item. And let's start building out some code here. And we're going to touch on some important stuff with regard to building collections and creating functions, backend and public code in our widget. So yeah, so let's go over here and start adding some code here. So I'm going to go and I'm going to select this input and I'm going to call this item input, and let's call this save button. And let's call this success message. And this will be hidden by default. Okay. And now we can add an event listener for our save button. So save button dot on click, and we'll run a function called save item. I'll call it save to do item, just so that we don't get confused between like collection item and to do item, because those are kind of the same word. And now we have to write out this function. So I'm going to create a new function. It's going to be an asynchronous function. And I'm going to call it save to do. And basically, it's not going to take any parameters to do item, sorry. And we're going to say that the new const new to do equals to Item input. It should really be consistent. To do item, to do item input, and dot value. Okay. Dot, yeah, dot value. Oh, shoot. This always happens to me. I accidentally give the names to the container instead of, let's call this wrapper. And the input. Okay, there we go. Great. So we selected the input and we got our value. And now we're going to need to persist this data. We're going to want to save this data in a database. And I'm going to build this out as a backend function, just so that to maximize kind of my control and security over it. So I'm going to go here into the backend. First, I'm going to go to databases. Sorry, I'm going to create a collection. And this is a key part about building widgets using Velo. And basically what we need to do is create something called a namespace. And we're going to see that when we install this app on people's sites, it's going to create collections within this namespace. And also when we access the collection for persisting the data, for executing all of our Wix data APIs, then we're also going to need to use this namespace. And it has to be unique. So it starts off with my username, and then it goes to do app. And let's see. Yeah, so I already have a namespace which is called to do app. So I can either just add a random number at the end, which I don't want to do, or I can just add here, let's say to do list app. Okay, and go, and this, okay, note this namespace cannot be changed later. So you want to pick something that you want. And if you want to change that, then you're going to have to like duplicate your app and change it. So next, excellent. Name of collection. So this is going to be to excellent. So each to-do will have a title. It'll have a Boolean, which will be completed. Completed. And it will have a member ID. Member ID. Going to go ahead and save that. Excellent. So that's our to-dos, and I'm going to give it like permissions, collection settings, permissions. So I'm just going to have this as everything will be admin. Okay, we'll manage all our permissions from the backend. I tend to do that more often than not, just because it gives maximum control. So I'm going to go here to our backend, and I'm going to create a new web module. Let's call it to do. And here, so we have some instructions about how to use functions and stuff like that in the backend. So we'll see here that this is instructions for how to use functions in your backend code here from the widget on your actual site. So if for some reason I want to import one of these functions that I'm going to write here, not into my widget, but into my site, then I would need to include the namespace. If you're importing into the blocks file, then you only use the actual name of the, um, of the block. Sorry, of the function. Not of the function, of the folder filing system, the standard like you would on a regular Wix site. Sorry if that was confusing. But one important thing that we do need here is we're going to need the namespace here. So I'm going to do const namespace equals to and this is Addyton Waxman slash to do list app. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to create a helper function, and I'm going to say name. I'm going to just call it name specify. Okay, and basically what it's going to take is the name of a collection, and it's going to return namespace plus namespace. Let's put this in a like literal namespace slash collection. Just because I think that this will be the simplest way to do this. Yeah. Okay, this code will go all the way on the bottom. Don't need to look at it anymore. And here I'm going to import Wix data. Wix data. So I have access to all of the Wix APIs here, and I'm going to create export function add to do item. Okay, and here we're going to have the title of the to do item. We're going to pass that into the function. And the first thing that we're going to do, I'm going to import current member from Wix members backend. And I'm going to have a try catch here. Try catch. And we're going to say const no. Const member equals await async function current member dot get member. Okay, so we're going to get the member that's current. And if there's an error there, then we'll say console log error, and we'll return the and if we have a member, so we're not, if there's no member here, then what will happen is we'll just be thrown into the catch. Okay, so if there's no member, they're not adding a to-do item. If there is a member, then what we'll want to do is we'll want to insert a new to-do item into the database. So I'm going to say const new to-do item equals await Wix data dot insert. And here, collection ID, I'm going to add our new function name specify to do list. No, to-dos. By the way, there's this new cool thing where you can copy the collection ID like that, which actually might have made this easier because it copies it with the full thing. I didn't think of that because that's kind of new. But yeah, anyway, I already created my function, so I'm going to stick with it. And here I'm going to pass in also the title. No, sorry. Change of plans. Const new to do item is going to be equal to title, and the title is going to be the title, and completed is going to be false. We're going to assume that if you're adding a new to do item, then it's false, like you haven't done it yet. And the member ID is going to be the member.id. And then this is going to be the inserted to do item. And then we're going to return inserted to do item. After, of course, we insert it here. So I'm going to have here new to do item. And I'm also going to suppress auth true. Okay, just so that, because this is all admin controlled, our database. So we're going to need to suppress auth if we want to let just a regular member insert, but we're verifying first that they're a member before letting them insert. So that's all secure. Okay, so this is our function that will add to-do items. And then I can go ahead and go to our add item block. And we can import that function over here. We get rid of all this. Import add to-do item from backend to do. Okay, so since we're inside the block, I can just add it like this. If we were outside of our block, so we're in the main site and we want to import this function for some reason, then we could do that using the full namespace. Okay, so it would be add Eitan Waxman slash to do list app slash backend, I think. Might need to double check that, but something along those lines. And this is cool because it kind of gives access to people from the site itself to insert to-do list items, not through the widget that we defined. I'm not sure if there's a way to disable that. Like if you don't want people to have access to these backend APIs. Yeah, not sure. That's a question mark. If anybody knows the answer, I don't think so. I'll give like my kind of intuition. I don't think that that's possible. But if anybody does know that it is possible, then do let me know. Okay, so we imported that. We are going to say const inserted to do equals await add to do item title new to do, and we're going to put this in a try catch. And then if there's an error, then we'll say console.log error. And I'm going to create another helper function that's just going to be for showing the errors. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call it show success message. So function show success message. And then here we'll have the message. And then what it will do is it will success message dot text equals message and success message dot show. And let's just put a timeout. So timeout. I didn't have the nice. Anyway, let's say after half a second, it'll disappear. Okay, so success message dot hide. And we can call this function over here if there's an error. Even though it's called success message, it'll still show our errors. Usually, like in a regular app that I'm building, I usually put in one error message, one success message, one loader. That's kind of my pretty much standard practice. But when I'm doing demos and I'm lazy, then I then I just do it like this. So show success message, and here we're going to have the error. And I'm just going to make sure it's a string, so .toString. And here we're going to console log inserted to do, and then if inserted to do dot error, okay, because you remembered if there was an error in our original function, then we return that error like that. Okay, so if there's an error, then we're going to do the same thing here. Avoid this whole thing. Okay. Awesome. This is looking pretty good. What we need to do now is just actually display these to-do items in the person's list. So to do that, I am going to go here and I'm going to add another function. So async function, get to-do items. And this actually doesn't need any parameters because we're just going to get that member. So I'm going to copy over the code here. It's actually going to be quite similar. Okay, so we're going to get the current member, and then we're going to run a query. So I'm going to say const to do query result equals await Wix data dot query dot name specify to do's, and we're going to get ones that have equal member ID to the member ID of the current member. Okay, so we're getting all the list items associated with a specific member. Obviously, this can become much more complex. We could have separate lists for each member and very cool stuff, but we're not doing that right now. So I'm going to get find, and we're going to say if to do query result dot items dot length is smaller than 1, then we're going to return Let's return error. No items found. And if that's not the case, then we're going to return to-do query result dot items. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and get that. And this we're going to be adding to our other widget. So we have our to-do list over here. And here, what we're going to do is that as soon as this page loads, we're going to actually load our to-do list. So let's have an async function, load to-do list. And this function, we can import here on top from our backend. Import to get to-do items from backend slash to-do. And then here, we're going to say const item to-do items equals await get to-do items. And then we're going to assign that to the repeater. To-do repeater dot data equals to-do items if there's no error. Okay, if to-do items dot error, then what we're going to do is we are going to load example to do. So let's say console.log error. Right here. Console.log to do items.error. And we're going to load example to do. Because basically, really the situation where there can be an error is if there is if there's no items in the list, pretty much. That's what we defined in the backend at least. So basically, instead of loading this example to do all the time, we're only going to run it in a situation where there's no items. And again, the site owner still has the ability to determine if they want to show an example to do or not in this specific situation, but they won't be able to show an example to do if the person actually has items, because that doesn't make sense. So basically, depending on the prop, if there are no items in the list, they will either see the example or they will see them. And then we can also wrap this entire thing in a try catch. And I didn't really add any message here for errors in the to-do list, which might have been a good idea. So I'm just going to log an error if there is any. And in a future production version of this app, then I will add in a success message. So I'm just going to do console.log error. Cool. And we're going to load the to-do list every time we load the page. Okay, so if the page loads, then we'll load the to-do list. I think we are done. Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to build. Oh, let's do this. So I'm going to collapse this to-do repeater, and I'm only going to show it. I'm going to do finally do repeater dot. Cool. Now I think we're done, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to build the first version of our app, which is very exciting. I'm going to go ahead and hit build, and I'm going to build the major version. I'm going to write yay. Before I do this, I'm actually going to show one thing. So if I go over app details, maybe? No, I'm looking for the README. Anybody knows where the README is? Yell at me through the screen. Where's that README? Oh, man. And I've done this before. View app. App. Maybe I have to build the version first. Let's see. Major version. Yay. Let's go ahead and build. But that doesn't make sense. I would have to add that before. Anyway, basically there's a way to add a README file, which is basically kind of like a list of instructions for people how to use your app. Because, like if they just install the app out of the blue, they won't know that we have all these cool props. And I mean, the props, maybe they'll see through the settings, but the events and the functions and all that and how it basically works, they won't be able to see all that. So there is a way to add a README file. Found it. So public and backend to your README. Yeah, and here you can kind of just write the instructions. I'm not going to do it right now because I'm too lazy. But basically, you can do it there, and it uses a language called markup. So like you can see these, um, these pound signs. They kind of find what's a title, what's not. You can look up Google or ChatGPT how to write markup or whatever. But actually, so anecdote, when I was trying to practice this using ChatGPT and write my README files, so since ChatGPT, I think, uses markup for some of its display, like, sometimes how it displays code and stuff like that. So it actually uses markup language to define how things will be displayed in ChatGPT. So when you actually ask it to write markup, it kind of gets a little messed up. So anecdote. Anyway, so yeah, we built it, and now let's go back to our site, and we can install the kind of final version. So I'm going to go ahead and do apps. I'm going to clear out the old widgets. Leave our clear button, why not? Does not hurting. And I'm going to go to the App Store, private apps, and you'll see the To-Do app is installed with the test version, see all versions, and I can go ahead here and change the version to version 1. And now here, this is what I was talking about. Remember, it says this is the dependencies that we set up earlier. So need Wix members area. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue. And now it should be installing the Wix members area on my site. Awesome, I think, maybe. Let's go back out and go back in again. We're getting to that point after being in Wix for like an hour and a half and also trying to record video at the same time. And then, the functionality of my computer kind of slows down a bit. Cool. To-do app installed. Okay, V1 latest, awesome. So we have the latest, newest, most updated version of the app here on the site. And I'm going to go ahead and add in our widgets. So if I go here to app widgets, then I can go to To-Do app and I can install the to-do list. And I'm also going to install what I didn't install last time, which is the way to add the to-do items. So we have the list itself, put that on the left, let's say. And then I can also add the add item widget. And these don't even have to be on the same page of your website. Okay, like they're two widgets. You can have one on one page and you can have one on the other page. I'm putting them side by side just for simplicity's sake. But let's go ahead and publish this. Wait, let me just, yeah. So I'm going to change this to do list and publish. Awesome. And let's go and refresh our main site. And you can start putting bets now if you think this will work off the bat the first time or not so much. Oh, why did these show here? I thought I set this to collapsed. Yeah, it's showing as collapsed here. That's weird. This should be collapsed. Oh no. Okay. I know what happened. I know what happened. Okay, I'll explain what happened. So basically, if you remember what in all cases, we expand this. If we don't have any items that we got from the back end, then let me just show you what's going on here in the console. Ooh, so get to do items is not a function. Okay, let's see. Get to do items is not a function. Do. Oh, I forgot to add the export keyword here. So what happened basically is that it tried to do this, but I guess it threw into the catch, so error, and then it expanded, but it expanded without running load example to do. Maybe that should be run. Yeah. So maybe this should only happen. Change my mind. This should only happen here. We don't need this finally. Okay, great. So this is not ideal to happen in the first version of your app, but now what we can do is we can build a new version, and we have two options here. So we can either build a minor version, so it's a change that won't break the app's functionality. Let's say we add a new feature or something like that. A major version would be something that breaks functionality. So let's just give an example. So like if I went to the API and I changed the name of this event from change to pineapple, then that would be a major version update, because that means that anybody that has this app installed on their site and they're using this change event to do something on their site and they update the app, then it will all break because the name of the event has changed. That's like a breaking change, so that's a major update. And then people have the choice if they want to update or not, and they can do so as they update their code base and whatnot. The A minor update would be, for example, if I added some kind of functionality, so like I added a new event. So a new event that fires, that exposes something new, and it can't break anybody's site because they never used that event before because it didn't exist. Okay, so that would be a minor update. Even though theoretically changing the name to Pineapple is a very small thing, where a new event could be a big thing, but that is the logic of major and minor. So I'm going to do a minor version update, because this is something that if they don't update, then their app won't work at all. So I'm going to choose minor update and zoom out a bit just to build. Zoom in. And where are we here? Okay, so I'm going to want to go here, and I'm going to want to make sure that we update it to the last version. So you can see here I'm still on version 1 latest, and I can go here and see. So it takes some time to propagate, but if we go to see all versions, there we go, version 1.1, changing the version, and now you can see here the version is updated, so I'm going to go ahead and publish my site. Awesome. And I'm going to go here and load the site. So this is looking better now. And let's see if this works at all. And I'm going to add here an item. So let's say buy milk and save. Object, awesome. That probably means there was an error of some sort. Let's see. Details, application error. Forbidden, forbidden, forbidden. Let's see, let's see. Okay, so one thing that could have gone wrong is that I go back to my block and I go to the to-do list. So here in the query, I'm going to want to use suppress auth as well because everything is admin. So if I don't do that, then I won't be able to get my list. I don't think that that is the only thing that was going on here because I tried to insert a new to-do item. Um, so here I am inside of my Wix block app, and I'm trying to think about why I would be forbidden here. So I do have access to the data set because I'm using suppress auth to do insert. So the only other thing that I'm doing here that would really trigger forbidden is this, which is getting the member. And the reason that I think that this is what's happening is basically I did have the dependency of telling them to install the Wix member app. But what I didn't do is ask them for permission to access the members on their site because essentially what this API does is it gets member information. And then, I mean, I have access to this code, so I could actually take this member information and do stuff with it. So I've basically this person who is installing this widget on their site is giving me access to all their members. And that's something that we need to ask for their permission for first before they install the app. And that's something that we hadn't talked about yet. And let's talk about it. So if I go here to app, then you'll see here that we have installation settings. Okay, and this is also rather new to blocks. And if you've published an app on the regular app market before, this might look a little familiar. And here we have a lot of different settings that regarding the app. I didn't want to touch on it too much because it's really kind of a more advanced level. This is also where we would submit our app to the app market if we were doing so. But we can see here that one thing that we have here is permissions. Okay, and what I can do here is I can add the permissions that I need to access different Wix APIs. Okay, so if I go here to add permissions, then I can select a category. And you can see here that there are different permissions for lots of the different Wix API infra. What's that? Interesting. And if we go to Wix contacts and members, then I can request different permissions with regard to members, and the permissions that I want is the permission to read member data. Okay, that's the permission that I need for this app to work, I think at least. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click Save. So now I am going to go to my app. And I'm not sure if I need to do another build here or not, to be honest, but I'm going to do one. And I'm going to do a major version update because this is really a big change that lets me access their data and whatnot. So I'm going to go here and say access member API, zoom out. And typically these are all stuff that you'll want to do before you even release version 1. So you want to do all this on test versions because it doesn't look so great that like your app only starts working on version 3.2 or whatnot. But since I'm just practicing around here, I'm just doing a demo, I'm kind of more nonchalant about it. And we are, yeah, so if you're still watching and you didn't like the video the last time I asked you to like the video, so this would now would be really nice to like the video because you've been watching for a very long time. And the site has loaded, sorry, the block published, and let's just go and make sure we're on the latest version. And I think it'll probably have some kind of prompt now to, um, yeah, okay, let's see. I'm surprised that it didn't have like a prompt which asks for the permissions. Let's see if it actually works or not. So I'm going to go ahead and hit publish, and I'm going to refresh. Okay, so after trying to dig a little deeper into what the issue was, I think I found it, and I went for the more complicated thing before the simpler thing. It's good because we did learn about the app permissions, which is an important part. But I think that the issue might have been was just that I am not logged into the website. So yeah, kind of like, newbie mistake. But basically, I had required somebody to be a member in order to add an item. But if they're not logged into the site, then they're not a member. So then it threw a forbidden because the person is not a member. I had never seen, I wasn't expecting the error to be in that format. Um, so I'm still not 100% sure that was the issue, to be honest. But let's give it a try. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to sign up for this site just with Google. And now I am logged into the website. Okay. So let's try adding a to-do item now and see if that works. So I'm going to say buy milk, save, and no errors were thrown. Okay, so that's already good situation. And I'm going to add one more. Let's say buy, there was an error. Okay. Let's try again. Buy eggs, save, and I'm going to refresh the page. Okay, that's not my fault. First thing that's happening in this video, that's not my fault. Server error, Wix. Let's try refreshing again. Oh no. Um, I guess my block just put too much strain on the Wix servers. Um, yeah, but if we go here into the back end, so I do see here that um, that it was inserted. Okay, so at least the egg one was inserted. I'm not sure why the milk one wasn't inserted. Okay, so my app is back. I don't know what was going on with Wix. But we could see that the buy eggs was added to the list. I'm not sure why the milk was not added. Let's try adding it again. So I'm going to go in here and go buy milk and click save. Okay, buy milk was added. So I haven't added any functionality where the to-do list will refresh automatically as soon as the to-do item is saved, especially because I wasn't sure if these two widgets would be placed on the same page or not. What we could do is we could technically create, I think we can create a third widget. So I can do, let's say, full app, and then I can add, I think I can add widgets into this widget somehow. Let's see, 1 second. Full app, add widget. Oh, here, to-do list. Yeah, and then I can add another widget in here, add item, and I can create one which is like the full app, and then also program the interactions between these two if they're both on the same page, or I can expose the events and have people code it for themselves on their website. Um, but again, I mean, mostly what I was trying to get at here is a demonstration of how to use Wix blocks. So I'm not going to go, all gung-ho on creating the perfect to-do list here, but there's definitely a lot that can be done to improve this block. I do want to just do like an overall recap what we talked about. So we talked about how to create a Wix block, how to get to this editor for creating Wix blocks, how it's similar to Editor X in terms of how the designing works. We talked about some of the unique coding elements, which is the different widget APIs of properties, events, and functions, how to select the widget element in the code, how to set up special designs, configurations. In terms of panels, I did not talk about that, so I'll say that now. So we can create a new panel. I'm going to call it new panel 1. And basically, this is kind of a unique settings panel that you can add to the configuration. And I can add an element in here. So let's say button. And then I can, well, the button is not such a great example, but let's say I add a button here, and then when this button is clicked, this will only be in the editor. This has unique code that's written over here. So this panel has code that can be run when something is changed here in these settings. So it can either be, you can either save something to props, you can create an event, you can, I don't think you can create an event, sorry. Scratch that, that's not true at all. You can change props, you can do something else, but basically it just gives you kind of another outlet to control things that wouldn't be controlled through the standard setting panel. So that's over here. And we talked about creating a collection, how we wrote some backend code, how we access the collections that are unique to our app, which you can see if you go to your website where you installed the application and you go into collections, let's say, then you'll see here that the collection is here under 8 on Waxman's to-do list app, and we have the collection right over here, and you can see that in the Velo view as well. Over here, databases, so my collections, and then here we have that collection over here. And this is a unique instance of the collection just on this person's website, so the block itself doesn't have access to this collection. I don't have access to this data as the creator of the block, unless this is my website. We talked a little bit about publishing the apps in terms of build, major build, minor build. We talked about unique permissions that you'll need and dependencies. I'm going to put like an asterisk over the permissions in terms of the installation settings because I don't think that that was our original issue. It's possible. Again, Wix Blocks is still evolving. So nothing that you saw here is set in stone, but it's possible that these permissions are only necessary if you're installing the app as a third-party app. So like somebody is installing your app from the Wix marketplace, as opposed to you going into a website that you have permissions to, that somebody added you as a collaborator and you adding your block in there. Those might be different in terms of the permissions. And because when we were reinstalling our app after we set these unique permissions, I didn't see any kind of pop-up which required kind of to give those permissions when the app was being installed, which leads me to think that they weren't taking effect. So these might be something that's unique for the marketplace setup, which, as I said, all happens over here. You can kind of just walk through the blockers in terms of what you have to add to the app in order to be able to submit it to the marketplace. Again, it's going to be a process. I tried to submit one app, just kind of, I wanted to submit it, but it wasn't really critical to me. It was really just to kind of experiment with the process. And I got back a lot of feedback, more than I was hoping to have to change. So just take that into account when you're developing apps. But Wix Blocks basically gives you the ability to create complex functional apps in the Wix ecosystem. So you don't have to kind of create these using some other language. You don't have to build it in React and then use the app marketplace to use it on your sites. You can kind of build within the familiar Wix environment with a few kind of nicks and knacks here and there, a few additions, and really build apps with advanced functionality that you can use on multiple sites. This is great for if you're an agency, if you're a designer, if you're a Wix developer. And it's also a great opportunity, I think, for different service providers and vendors that are trying to get their services into Wix. And maybe they struggled a bit with the classic app market. I think this is a new opportunity for them to kind of get in as well, tapping into the abilities of maybe some of the Wix developers in order to do that. So that is all for today in terms of Wix blocks. I won't say that we touched everything, but I think we did cover enough to get you started on building your own block. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please don't forget to like and subscribe. You can leave comments with other suggestions, or you can visit the wixwiz.com/YouTube and give your suggestions there and vote on different videos that you want to see. And if a video, if some idea gets a significant amount of votes, then we'll go for it. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.